Imagine you show up to a friend's house for dinner, completely uninvited. You knock on the door, you sit down at the dining table, and to punish you for your terrible manners, the host walks out of the kitchen and serves you a freezing cold, unappetizing slab of leftover sheep meat.
Which is just, incredibly hostile when you actually picture it.
Right, it is so aggressive. But for decades, people genuinely believed this bizarre passive-aggressive dinner tactic was the factual origin of the phrase giving the cold shoulder.
Yeah, they really did. It was a hugely popular theory.
So today, our mission is to unpack a short but really fascinating article that traces the real history of this idiom. We are going to explore where it actually comes from, how one single phrase spawned a massive culinary myth, and what our need to invent these stories reveals about how we communicate rejection.
It is a perfect example of how the language we use every day on autopilot carries this hidden history. We toss around idioms without a second thought, but they all have a paper trail.
They really do. And when you stop to think about the literal words in this specific idiom, it paints a wonderfully weird visual.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, of all the body parts you could use to reject someone, why the shoulder? And why is it, categorized by a drop in physical temperature?
Right, it's very specific.
If you picture it literally, someone giving you a cold shoulder sounds like they are suffering from localized hypothermia.
Which is exactly why people eventually invented that story about the sheep meat.
Right.
The human brain dislikes abstract language. We want a tangible, logical explanation for the words we use.
We want it to make physical sense.
Exactly. But before we get to the meat myth, we have to look at the actual fossil record of the phrase.
Okay, let's do it.
When linguists want to trace the origin of a term, they look for the earliest recorded use in print. And according to both the Oxford English Dictionary and Merriam-Webster, the first time anyone was ever recorded giving the cold shoulder was in the year 1816.
So 1816 is our starting line.
That's the year.
If I'm looking at the timeline of the early 19th century, we're talking about a period where mass communication is essentially just the printing press.
Pretty much just that, yeah.
So I'm assuming this phrase didn't just, bubble up in a random diary entry that no one ever read.
No, your assumption is spot on. It actually appeared in a published piece of literature, specifically a novel called The Antiquary.
The Antiquary, okay.
Yeah, written by the wildly famous Scottish writer Sir Wальтер Scott.
Ah, Sir Wальтер Scott. That makes sense. He was a literary giant.
Huge. A massive celebrity of his time.
But here is the piece of the puzzle I want to figure out. Just because a famous author puts a phrase in a novel in 1816, that doesn't necessarily mean everyone in Scotland or England is walking down the street saying it.
No, definitely not.
So how do we know he didn't just borrow it from the local pub?
Well, that is the mystery at the center of this phrase.
Yeah.
There is absolutely zero written record of giving the cold shoulder anywhere before Sir Wальтер Scott's novel.
Wait, really? Nothing at all?
None. The historical record is completely blank until The Antiquary is published.
Oh, wow.
Now, Scott was famously known as a master wordsmith who loved to play with language and, coin his own expressions. So it is entirely possible that he fabricated the phrase entirely out of his own imagination right there at his desk.
So we're potentially looking at a linguistic Big Bang.
Exactly.
One day the concept doesn't exist, and the next day a novelist types it into existence, and over 200 years later, if you are listening to this right now, you are probably still using it to complain about someone at your office.
It is a remarkable testament to his cultural influence.
It really is.
But, to be fair to the historical ambiguity, the source material points out a few other theories.
Okay, what else could it be?
Some scholars believe Scott might have been alluding to the book of Nehemiah in the Bible, attempting to give his character's dialogue a sort of ancient scriptural gravity.
Oh, I see. Or, I suppose, if there were no recording devices in 1816, he could have just overheard a very localized Scottish slang term used by a specific group of people.
Right.
And he was simply the first person to write it down.
That is highly plausible. Slang exists in the spoken word long before it ever makes it to the printing press.
Yeah, of course. People have to say it before they write it.
The truth is, we will never definitively know if it sprang entirely from his imagination or if he was just capturing the local dialect of a Scottish tavern.
That makes sense.
But the origin of the phrase is only half the story. The more important mechanism is how it's spread.
Right, because for an idiom to survive from 1816 to today, it needs an incredibly powerful delivery system.
Absolutely.
And in the 19th century, without broadcasting or the internet, that delivery system had to be literature. I mean, literature was the mass media.
It was essentially the only mass media. And you have to remember how people consumed novels in the 1800s. Books were expensive, so people shared them.
Oh, right, they passed them around.
Yeah, they were serialized in magazines and newspapers. And crucially, there was a massive culture of reading aloud in parlors.
Okay, so it was a group activity.
A single copy of a novel might be read aloud to an entire household over a series of evenings.
So the written word was actively translating into the spoken word every single night.
Yes, exactly.
That is a fascinating mechanism for spreading slang. If someone reads a catchy new phrase aloud to 10 people in a parlor, those 10 people might start using it the next day.
And it didn't just stay with Wальтер Scott's readership. The phrase slipped into wider 19th century English and was rapidly adopted by the heavyweights of the era.
Who are we talking about?
Charles Dickens, William Makepeace Thackeray, Anthony Trollope, and the Bronte sisters all started using the cold shoulder in their own writing.
Wow. Okay, so once Dickens and the Bronte sisters are having their characters give each other the cold shoulder, the phrase is essentially immortalized.
It's locked in.
It's locked into the cultural lexicon because those books became the foundational texts of English literature. He basically dropped a new slang term, and then influencers of the day, like Dickens and the Bronte sisters, picked it up, making it go entirely viral.
That is the perfect modern analogy for it.
But this brings me to a point of friction.
Okay, what's that?
If the phrase was popularized by these massive, widely read literary works, where does the bizarre story about the sheep meat enter the picture?
Right. It enters because of a phenomenon linguists call folk etymology.
Folk etymology.
Yeah, even though people were reading the phrase in Dickens and Scott, the exact origin was still a mystery to the general public. And society hates a mystery.
Oh, we really do. We can't stand not knowing.
Right. So when faced with a gap in knowledge about why we say what we say, human beings will invariably invent a story to fill the void.
We want a narrative. We don't want to just accept that Wальтер Scott put two words together because they sounded nice.
No, that's too
We
boring.
want a dramatic backstory.
And folk etymologies are usually incredibly dramatic, highly literal, and highly visual.
Okay, so what was the story here?
In this case, the folk etymology that took over society claimed that the shoulder in the phrase had nothing to do with human anatomy.
Oh, really?
No, it claimed the idiom originated from the practice of serving actual literal cold shoulder meat,
Just a cold cut of meat.
specifically a cold shoulder of mutton.
Okay, let's explore the mechanics of this myth because the psychology behind it is hilarious.
It really is.
If you're listening to this and trying to picture the scenario, the theory goes that you are hosting a dinner. Someone shows up at your door, like a distant relative you can't stand, or an uninvited guest.
Right. And because of the strict social rules of hospitality in the 19th century, you cannot simply turn them away or refuse to feed them.
You're trapped.
You are bound by etiquette to invite them in.
But you want to send a very clear, undeniable message that you are entirely unsympathetic to their presence.
A physical message.
So instead of serving them a warm, fresh, high-quality cut of meat, you intentionally go into the larder and serve them a leftover portion of cold shoulder meat.
That is the widely repeated legend, yes.
It's so specific.
The cold meat acts as a physical symbol. You are fulfilling your basic, bare minimum duty as a host to provide sustenance, but the low quality and the cold temperature of the meat signify that their arrival is unwelcome.
It was viewed as the ultimate passive-aggressive maneuver.
Exactly.
But here's what bothers me about the logic of this meat theory and why I find it so hard to believe that anyone ever actually did this.
Go ahead.
If I really want an uninvited, annoying guest out of my house, giving them a plate of free mutton, I mean, even if it is cold, seems like a terrible deterrent.
Because free food is still free food.
Free food is still free food. They are going to sit there and eat it.
You're pointing out the exact flaw in the social strategy.
Yep.
It's an incredibly inefficient way to insult someone.
Highly inefficient. If someone shows up uninvited today, modern passive-aggressive hosting tactics are much more subtle. Well, you might deliberately offer a lingering guest the most uncomfortable folding chair in the room.
Oh, that's good.
Right. You are technically giving them a seat, fulfilling your duty as a host, but the physical discomfort gently hints that they shouldn't settle in and stay all night.
You don't give them a meal?
No, you give them a reason to leave.
That folding chair analogy is perfect because it highlights the concept of minimum viable hospitality.
Yes, just enough to be polite.
You give them just enough to avoid being outright hostile, but not enough to make them feel welcome. And despite the logical flaws you just pointed out, the cold mutton myth became deeply ingrained in the culture.
People just ran with it.
By the late 19th century, the idea was so widely accepted that people actually altered the idiom to fit the story.
Wait, they changed the phrase itself?
They did. People started specifically saying, I gave him a cold shoulder of mutton.
No way!
They literally added the mutton part to the phrase. The Oxford English Dictionary even notes in its definition that this association with meat became so common that it spawned numerous puns and elusive uses over the decades.
That is incredible. They retrofitted the English language to match a fake story they made up to explain the English language.
It shows how powerfully our brains prefer a tangible visual explanation over an abstract one.
Because everyone gets food.
Culinary imagery is easy to understand. Everyone knows what a cold, unappetizing piece of leftover meat looks like. It gave people a physical object to attach to the emotional concept of rejection.
But if this was a widespread dinner party practice, like if people were actually serving cold sheep to their enemies on a regular basis, wouldn't there be historical records of it?
You would think so.
That brings us to the actual evidence. What does the historical record say about passive-aggressive mutton?
The historical record is entirely silent. And that forces us to abandon the meat myth completely. The source material makes it clear that this is a classic folk etymology with absolutely no factual basis.
So it's totally made up.
Completely. There are no 19th century etiquette books advising hosts to serve cold mutton to unwanted guests. There are no diaries complaining about receiving the cold mutton treatment at a dinner party.
So nobody was ever angrily slicing cold lamb in the kitchen?
Nobody. It was an invention crafted after the phrase was already popular, designed purely to make the words make sense to people who had forgotten or never knew the original intent.
Which means we have to move out of the dining room and look somewhere else for the real origin. If it's not a piece of livestock, we are back to human anatomy.
We are. The most likely explanation for the phrase is also the simplest and the most literal.
Okay.
The shoulder being alluded to is your own shoulder. Giving someone the cold shoulder implies the physical act of turning your back on them.
The mechanics of that are so interesting. You don't turn your whole body away and run.
No, it's smaller than that.
You just pivot. You angle your body so that your shoulder creates a physical barrier between you and the other person.
It is an incredibly nuanced physical gesture.
Yeah.
By turning your shoulder toward them, you are looking away. You are coldly ignoring whatever trouble, issue, or conversation they are attempting to bring to you.
And if we break down the word cold in this context, it taps into something deeply psychological.
How so?
We aren't talking about the temperature of the room. We're talking about emotional temperature.
Yes. This touches on the concept of embodied cognition.
Embodied cognition.
Yeah. Humans consistently map physical sensations to emotional states. We describe affectionate people as warm and unsympathetic people as cold.
Right. A warm smile versus a cold stare.
Exactly. When you turn your back on someone in need, you are demonstrating a profound lack of warmth. You are showing zero sympathy for their situation.
It is the breaking of the social contract. And in many ways, that kind of cold, silent rejection is far more cutting than outright hostility.
It really is.
If someone is yelling at you, they are still engaging with you. Anger requires energy. Anger implies that the relationship or the conflict matters enough to fight about.
That's a great point. When you give someone the cold shoulder, the underlying message is that the person isn't even worth your energy to argue with. The silence is the weapon.
When you bring that into a modern context, the literal physical act of turning your shoulder to block someone out is basically the 1816 equivalent of leaving someone unread.
Oh, wow, yes. That is a very accurate modern parallel. The mechanism is identical.
Think about it from a behavioral standpoint. If you deliberately turn off your read receipts, or if you read a message and choose not to reply, you are signaling something very specific.
You're signaling that you're done.
Right. You are saying, I am fully aware that you are trying to communicate with me, but I am actively choosing to offer zero engagement.
Total shut up.
You aren't typing an angry response. You are just being completely unresponsive. It's the ultimate digital body language block.
And just like the physical turning of the shoulder, it leaves the other person powerless.
Yeah, what can they do?
They can't respond to your argument because you haven't made one. You've simply shut the door. It is brilliant in its simplicity, which is probably why Wальтер Scott's phrase, if he truly is the one who coined it, has survived for over 2 centuries.
He managed to capture a very specific, deeply painful human behavior in just 3 words.
It's a testament to the power of a good metaphor. The imagery is so visceral that even when we completely divorced it from its 19th century origins, it still perfectly describes the feeling of being shut out.
It really does.
Our deep dive today really highlights why it is worth examining the idioms we use every single day. Our language is layered with these hidden histories and persistent folk etymologies.
Fascinating.
The words we use on autopilot are actually shaping how we conceptualize and express our deepest emotions. From affection to utter rejection, there is always a story beneath the surface if you take the time to look for it.
There always is. We started with a simple question about what it means to be ignored, and that question took us all the way back to the Scottish literature of 1816.
We covered a lot of ground today.
We watched an author's phrase go incredibly viral thanks to parlor reading and superstars like Charles Dickens. We uncovered a massive society-wide delusion about passive-aggressive dinner portions and cold mutton.
The mutton myth.
And finally, we stripped all those myths away to arrive at the simple, cold reality of human body language and emotional temperature.
It is a journey from the printing press to the dining room to the human spine.
And that leaves me with a final thought for you to ponder, something that builds on this evolution of how we communicate.
Let's hear it.
If so many of our classic foundational idioms are deeply rooted in physical, face-to-face gestures, like literally turning your shoulder to block someone out, and those physical interactions are slowly being replaced by digital communication, what new phrases are going to emerge from our virtual habits?
That's a great question.
200 years from now, when linguists are trying to decode our modern language, will leaving someone on read become the new cold shoulder for a future generation trying to explain the feeling of rejection?
Probably.
Will they invent their own bizarre myths about what on read actually meant? Keep an eye out for how you communicate today, because you might just be leaving a fossil record for the future.